everyone, and today we're going to be jumping in to a new true crime documentary, one that shaped true crime, I would think. Um, and that is The Staircase. Oh boy, guys. If first of all, if you never seen this documentary, I highly recommend that you do before listening to me. Um because I feel like you really need the visual of what we're about to talk about. But this documentary, like I said, I think just is has just shaped what true crime is, what true crime documentaries can look like. I mean, I know there's stuff from before this particular one, but it's really in that time because this happened, I believe, in 2001, and this documentary came out not long after, maybe a few years after that. Um, and then there's also the docu-series that starred, Colin Firth as Michael Peterson and Toni Collette, um, as Kathleen, and it's just that show was also very good. Um, if you would rather watch that versus watching The Staircase, you can do that too, because it is much shorter than The Staircase. Staircase we're looking at, I think 13 episodes. And so 13. Yeah, I think 13. And then the Staircase docu-series, which I can't remember what it's called. It it's like I think 6 episodes. So anyways, this particular documentary for me, the first time I watched this is now my third run through actually. The first time I watched it was, I guess, 2018. Um, and when it came to Netflix, and that's when I remember watching it. Um, and I was absolutely captivated. I've been absolutely captivated ever since, and this is definitely a case that whirls in my mind constantly. So, yeah, let's just jump in. So, I believe how we're gonna basically be doing this. We're gonna be with this documentary, I believe, for at least uh a few weeks. I think 5 or 6 weeks, and we're gonna be kind of doing like 3 episodes. I think, or is it two? Am I doing two? I think I'm doing two. 2 episodes each episode, and the last one will have three. The last episode will have 3 episodes, so we can round that out. I think that's how I'm doing it. But yeah, so that's kind of how we'll be doing it. Just so everyone is aware, on the main feed, if you're listening to this on the main feed, of course, as always, you'll only get the first episode. The rest of the episodes you'll have to get on the Patreon. Anyways, let's just jump into the reason that we are here, and that is episode 1 of The Staircase. So, we hear a newscast saying that the police are investigating the death of Kathleen Peterson, who had fallen down the stairs. So, we kind of, just so it would make sense with this documentary, which I didn't actually remember they did this. Or maybe I just didn't pay attention because I'm doing notes, which is very different. They kind of tell you, kind of put like subtitles on the screen, kind of saying, this is what we're talking about in this scene, or and then this is what we're talking about in this scene. So for this part, we're kind of getting the events of December 9th, 2001, which is the the day that Kathleen died. Michael tells us that they were watching a movie. He had rented American Sweethearts. Um, Personally, I hated this movie. I hated this movie with a passion. I didn't I didn't like it. I didn't like it. Kevin Spacey, Kevin Spacey at the time was Kevin Spacey, Um, that has aged very differently. Anyways, so yes, they had rented Sweet American Sweethearts. Was it American Sweethearts? Am I getting this wrong? American Sweethearts was. Oh, wait a minute. That's a different movie. Kevin Spacey was American Beauty. American Sweethearts is the one with Julia Roberts, Catherine Zeta-Jones. Duh. Love that movie. Anyways, he rented it from Blockbuster. What a time, Blockbuster. The movie, he said, ended at around 11 p.m. And they talked for a bit about the movie, talked about, different things. They talked about the kids, what they were going to be doing, that kind of thing. And obviously, this is right before Christmas, right? So they were drinking. They had about 2 bottles. I'm thinking wine. They went outside. It was a nice night, he said. What's that like on December 9th? They went by the pool. They sat, he shows us the chair that they were sitting on and by the pool. And then she said that she had to go in because she had a meeting in the morning. Um, so he said, she walked away. I stayed back. And he says that was the last time that he saw her alive. Then he says this. I mean, she was alive when I found her, but barely. Now, I know some time has passed. At the time of this recording, it's probably been a couple years. So I understand some time has passed. But my Jesus, it's like at the end of the day, you still, I'm, as I do, I'm leaving my thoughts as to what I think at the very end of this. So if you want to know my thoughts and feelings on what I think, you'll have to wait till the last episode. But whether or not you did or you didn't do this, you still watched your wife die. And then you're going to say, well, barely. What? I mean, I get it. I get it. What? So we hear the 911 call. It's pretty infamous. Have you seen this documentary, seen anything having to do with this case, you've heard the 911 call. It's absolutely insane. Um, I'm actually going to insert it here in case you haven't listened to it. So just fair warning, if you haven't listened to it, it's a lot. It is a lot. He's very frantic. Obviously, it's a 911 call, but yes, I'm just inserting that here.
No, 911, where's your emergency? Oh, Peter Street, please. What's wrong? My wife's had an accident. She's still breathing. What kind of accident? Still downstairs. She's still breathing. Please. Is she conscious? What? Is she conscious? No, she's not conscious. Okay. How many stairs did you fall down? What? How many stairs? Stairs. How many stairs? Calm down, sir. Calm down.
No, 15, 20, I don't know. Please, get somebody here right away, please.
Okay, somebody's dispatching the ambulance while I ask you questions.
It's a Forest Hill, okay? Please, please.
Sir, somebody else is dispatching the ambulance. Okay, is she awake now? Hello?
So again, listening to the 911 call, I don't want to say, oh, he is faking, or he's being overly dramatic, because being overly dramatic means you're lying, right? That's what we think. But we've seen in previous cases, like, I can't remember her name right now. We really need to maybe put more focus on her instead of the person who killed her. But, the thing about Pam, you know, and we hear her husband's call when he comes home and finds her, and he does sound like he's faking. He does sound overly dramatic, and they believed he was guilty. Lo and behold, he wasn't. Far from it. And So I don't want to put a lot of credence in it, but I will say this. I do understand them being like, wow, okay. It is very theatrical. Just, it's a lot, right? So at this point, we hear from his oldest son. He said, I thought my dad had a heart attack, like when he pulled up, but then he was saying Kathleen, like he's saying her name. He knows that his dad wouldn't hurt Kathleen. Do you though? Do we ever really know what someone is capable of? And that's the crazy thing about this documentary and this case is, do we really truly ever know what someone's capable of? We can all snap. There's a whole show. And I know it's more about women, but there is a whole show of how people can snap. And what if things were figured out? What if things were said that set her off? You know? So, so not her, set him off. And then ultimately he hurt her, even if he didn't mean to. He could, try crime of passion. It's a thing. So it's, who knows? You know what I mean? Or maybe she really did fall down the stairs, but who knows? We don't know. But so he says he didn't think he would hurt her. But the police were kind of barking orders at them, maybe being too, I don't want to come at the police because I think if I'm walking into a scene like that, and again, I do warn, if you do decide to watch the documentary, if you haven't watched this documentary, fair warning, it is gruesome. We see, we see everything. We see the blood. We see, well, of course, her face is blurred, but we see her body lying there in the first episode. We see a lot. And how this episode ends as well is it is, it is a lot. We'll get to it. But we see everything. So I can imagine someone walking into this scene, seeing what they are seeing at the bottom of those stairs. Yeah, I think any normal, rational human is going to be in like, oh, so he killed her. He fucking killed her. Like he had to have. So I get it. But I can also understand from the family's perspective when in their minds, this was a tragic accident. The police are being very rough with them. And then we get the footage of Kathleen, like I just said, lying on the stairs. It never fails to be one of the worst imagery for me. And again, like I said, her face is blurred, which is more than I can say when they showed Nicole Simpson in the OJ doc that they did for Netflix last year, because shit, literally saw everything. So at least in this case, her face is blurred, but it is still a lot. It's it's sad. It's very, like, at the end of the day, this case for me, I yes, I am completely engrossed in the Michael Peterson of it all, the stories that are woven in this case that you're like, what the fuck? But at the core of it, it's Kathleen. And the tragic way of which she died, no matter how it happened, it's horrific. And so yeah, it's a lot. But in this case now we meet Margaret and Martha Radcliffe. Different last name in case you guys didn't notice, we'll get to it. Who are his daughters, and they say that he was saying, I didn't do this, and they believe that he did not kill Kathleen. They can't bring themselves to think that is reality. We then hear from Detective Art Holland, who says when he approached the victim, there was an abundant amount of blood, which is very true. It is a lot of blood. Again, for those who haven't seen this documentary, there's blood going up the walls. There's blood all over the stairs. I believe there was blood at the bottom of the stairs, blood on her. It's an absolutely horrific scene. Um, but yeah, he says that it was not consistent of someone falling down the stairs. Then we meet this lovely piece of shit named Jim Harden. He won't be the only piece of shit in this. Trust me. Um, I refer to him as this lovely piece of shit. That's what I refer to him as. Clearly, we don't know what happened, he says. And Michael isn't going to enlighten us. Which, duh, like, if he did do this, what criminal do you know is going to tell you what happened? You know what I mean? But anyways, he said, but we believe it was blunt force trauma, and then she bled to death. So with that being said, Michael is arrested. And then we meet Caitlin Atwater, who is the biological daughter of Kathleen, who does not believe that Michael is guilty at that time. That will change. Not yet, but it does change. Then we meet my favorite person. My favorite person, and I think the reason I come back to this documentary the most, besides the story in and of itself, and that's David Rudolph. I kid you not, y'all, when I first saw this man and I saw the passion of which he went about this, I absolutely fell in love with him. Yes, he's a defense attorney, but I absolutely fell in love with him. Um, Maybe I have a soft spot for lawyers as I work with them, but I absolutely love David Rudolph. There's just sometimes lawyers in this world that I'm like, I freaking love you. And he's one. So, yes, like I said, he is Michael's lawyer, and he has this team of people. Now, didn't catch all of their names, but there's consistent players in here that is a part of David's team. So we hear a meeting of the minds. Meeting of the minds. There was no footprints to show that this would have been an intruder, so that rules out the intruder theory, which is totally true. If a person came into this house, attacked Kathleen, there's no way in God's green earth that this man wouldn't have tracked her blood throughout the house. There's no way. No freaking way. So, yes, there is nothing like that. Then my other question to that is, I don't think was brought up here. If there's no footprints of like an intruder coming in, was there footprints from Michael going to her and aiding her potentially? Or even if he did kill her, like, is there anything? Because there's no way. And here's the other thing that isn't really said in here, I don't think. There was another staircase in this home. This was like the back staircase. So walk with me here, if he did do this, it is possible that he could have gone upstairs, changed his clothes, come back down. So it makes it look like he didn't do anything at all. That he really did come from outside and found his wife that way. You know what I mean? So, yeah. So, yeah, this says no intruder, but they did not think it was a rage thing. There was no skull fractures, which beats the hell out of him. Well, I guess fracture means that it would be broken, and which is true. The skull isn't like cracked open or anything like that. There was no lacerations in the face, which of course we don't see that. So there was no signs of defensive wounds. Who is just going to stay there and let themselves be um, hit on is what they are basically saying here. Like, you're going to, and it's automatic, you're automatically going to want to defend yourself. So there's going to be defensive wounds, whether it's like if you have a knife, then, you're going to get cut by the knife on your hand or something, or arm or something like that, blocking yourself, right? There's none of that. So even if there's no intruder, so there's no defensive wounds against an intruder, then wouldn't there not be defensive wounds against Michael if he really was trying to hurt her? She's not just going to sit there and take it, I would think. Um, doesn't matter if whether she's drunk, because she did have an alcohol level, but doesn't matter. She still would have fought. So that kind of adds to the theory of, well, then no one hurt her, right? So we meet Ron Greta, who co-wrote a book with Michael. So we haven't really talked about Michael's occupation here too much. He is an author. He wrote some books. He is a Vietnam War vet. Um, I think he tried to run for mayor or something like that too. Something to do with politics. He tried doing that. I don't think he succeeded there because no one liked him. But yeah. So this is Michael's world. So yeah, this Ron Garetta co-wrote this book with Michael called Johnny Two Shoes or something that came out in 1998. So really only about 4 years before the murder. So this is this book, which I've never freaking heard of in my entire life. But anyways, he says that he had called them that night. Ron Garetta had called them that night. There was playful banter as always. There was nothing out of the ordinary, he says. No distress, no stress, no tension. It was normal, which is why he cannot wrap his mind around like homicide, and not just homicide, but Michael Peterson, the one being the culprit. So while there's what I'm saying. Okay. I said they're not really hiding the crime scene photos too much. Um, I think at this point, this is when again we're having another meeting of the minds here. I think that that's timeless between prosecution, and they just have like the things there, and it's like they're not blurring her face. You can't really see her face either, but they're not really blurring it either. So it's like bullshit, just cool. Fuck. Anyway, but we see a picture of the back of her head, and the gashes in her head are absolutely unbelievable. At the end of the day, whether you think Michael did it, she fell, or she was attacked by a fucking owl, whatever it is, we'll get to the owl theory later. Whatever it is, this poor woman went fucking through it. Um, and prosecution is believing that there's no way this was inflicted by falling down the stairs. Which I get it, I understand. Another theory is the blood was so dry that she would have had to have been there for hours because they're saying the blood was dry. They didn't even need to have protective wear because the blood was so dry, which I I feel like a question that's never quite answered here. And I guess it would depend on the amount of blood you were working with. But how long does it take for blood to dry once it's outside of the body? Because if it takes a couple hours or an hour or whatever it was, there is no denying the fact that Michael Peterson said I was still outside for about 45 minutes to an hour after she had come in. So if that is the case, would blood dry in that time? And between him finding her in that state, um, and wanting to, render some sort of aid to her, was there a slight delay between him finding her and calling 911? That part is never really made clear. And that I remember anyways. And again, I've only rewatched the first episode so far. So I don't remember if that ever came up, but it makes me wonder, how long does it take for blood to dry fully? I don't know. So they're like, how was she alive as he said she was in the 911 call? Well, we don't know. Here's the other thing too. Was she actually alive? Because she wasn't conscious. Nowhere does anyone say she was when he found her. But he said that I don't know if he said that he felt a pulse or he thought he heard her breathing, but not obviously very well. Not to be morbid, but was she actually breathing or were we dealing with a death rattle? Again, we don't know. And I don't know if time of death was ever determined in this. Oh, like you would think it would have been. Or if it is, again, I don't remember. And again, I've only watched the first episode, rewatched the first episode again. So I don't fully remember if they ever talked about time of death. Um, so yeah, we see that he was let out on bail to await the trial. Then we see a meeting of the minds again. This time it's for defense. And y'all, not only am I dealing with, listen, I know blood spatter evidence is considered junk science and the whole bit, but I am absolutely fascinated by Dr. Henry Lee. And I'm fascinated by blood spatter analysis as well. I really am. But not only are we dealing with that, we are also dealing with Dr. Frickin' Spitz. Excuse the hell out of me, who is a pathologist. He is renowned. You know what I mean? And I completely forgot that he was a part of this. And I'm like, what? Like, I completely forgot. First time around, y'all, I think I remember. But I totally forgot. And I think, okay, this is fantastic. Not only do we have Dr. Henry Lee, who I think is incredible, but we have Dr. Spitz, who is one of the most incredible pathologists in this realm. So anyways, we have some great people here, right? Um, but listening to Dr. Spitz, he kind of is going through his thing first. He's absolutely fascinating, let me tell you, kind of talking about certain things that can't wrap my mind around, but I'm so fascinated. Then Dr. Lee is up and he's gonna go through his theories here. So he's like, let's talk about the blood stain patterns. There's more cast off on the ceiling. So then he suspects on the wall where the blood is going up that it could have been due to her coughing up blood, but no, not because of internal bleeding, but because, and this is graphic, y'all, I apologize, but more because there was external bleeding and it's going down her face. So here's my thing, because like I said, I love Dr. Lee. I do. And here I am playing a little bit of devil's advocate here. Now, cast off. We know cast off usually or I think you're saying there was no cast off, right? We would reread this. There is, I think I might want to say no cast off. I think that there was no cast off on the ceiling. I don't know why I said more. Maybe it's a typo, but I think there's no cast off on the ceiling, which basically, so I can't play devil's advocate. Sorry, guys. No, maybe I can. Give me a minute. Which basically means that if something was someone was attacking her with some sort of object, right? You can't not have cast off. Maybe you could, but I would think with the trauma that she endured, the blood force trauma that she endured, yeah, there's no way that there wouldn't be some form of cast off. But here I am going to play devil's advocate here. If she was coughing up blood, is it still possible that she was coughing up blood but still was attacked? You know what I mean? Not because she just happened to fall down the stairs, but she could have been attacked. And And then she maybe wasn't fully, she wasn't gone at that point, and she still could have coughed the blood up. I don't think that's crazy. I do, here's the thing, I do think either way you put it, yes, it could have happened, but I'm just saying, 'cause I do see what he's talking about, that it could have been due to coughing. I see it. But it doesn't rule out whether or not this woman was attacked by someone, right? It doesn't. That's the facts. Um, then we have a meeting with this jury selection expert. She addresses the elephant in the room. Who is going to believe that she fell down the stairs? Did you see the situation of which she was in? Like, no jury in their right mind or juror in their right mind is going to believe this woman just fell down the stairs, you know? David says, so here's our theory. We believe that she fell down the third step, hit her head on the door frame because there is some blood, and we saw it with Dr. Lee, there is some blood on the door frame, which lends me to think it could be one or two things, but it doesn't really have a pattern of someone maybe putting their hand there. Doesn't really look like that, but there is blood there. So then, how did it get there? How did it get there? It couldn't, like I said, it doesn't look like someone's hand. So that means it wouldn't have been Kathleen's, and it potentially wouldn't have been an intruder's if it is a hand, if it was a handprint of some sort. It wouldn't have been them. So how did the blood get there? I think it's a good point. So that's the theory. She hit her head on the door frame, fell from the third step, and then had lots of blood in that situation. Then she would have gotten up or tried to get up, fell again, and hit her head on the wall. She had a fair amount of blood on her feet at this point because she's attempting to get up again, they say, first they think, and she would have fallen again. Now, this scene, it's hard to picture it. It really is hard to picture it until it's reenacted. And in the docuseries, it is reenacted. And when you see it reenacted in that way, it's like, huh, maybe it could have happened this way. It's not crazy anymore. Maybe it could have happened that way. And watching the reenactment, Tony Collette reenact it. I think it was Tony Collette that reenacted it, or wasn't it? Watching her reenact it, it's like, again, it is very daunting. It's it's a lot. And if this is how she died, it's heartbreaking because she would have died alone and potentially calling out for help. Potentially, we don't know if she did or didn't, but or even if this is how it happened. But it's not crazy. It is not a crazy theory. So, meanwhile, Michael is in this meeting and he is hearing this theory, and he just starts breaking down and he ends up walking out. Now, before I kind of get to the next thing here, I can maybe understand a world where people are like, is this real? I think, and should not be a surprise to anyone, Michael Peterson is a weird man. He really is. But do I think he was necessarily faking this emotion? No. I think a person who could have potentially killed his wife can still have emotion about killing his wife, maybe, especially if it was an accident. So I don't think it's crazy. I do think it was a genuine reaction. But one of the people here on the team is kind of like, we got to stop doing this to him. It's not great to do this to him. It's his birthday. No offense. when we're dealing with the trial of his wife's death, you know what I mean? Um, to hell with his birthday. Like, I'm gonna say this here on the top of it, at least I'll say this. Do I like Michael Peterson? No. Mm-mm. Not even a little bit. I think he's grimy. I think he's slimy. I think he's full of shit. I do think that. Does that make him a murderer? No. But I'll leave that, my thoughts moving forward on that to the end. So Michael now talks about Kathleen and he says, there is not one thing that comes to mind when I think about her. Basically saying there's a bunch of different things that come to my mind when I think about her. Um, you see pictures of them. She's smiling. See their wedding photos. I mean, they genuinely look very happy. And we then learn about Patty. Patty, Patty, Patty. May she rest in power. Patty, who was Michael's first wife. They were married in 1968, I believe. They had their two children, Clayton and Todd. Both were born in Germany. We learn about a friend of Michael Peterson's named George Radcliffe. Remember that name? Who he met during the war. We find out that George was married to a woman named Elizabeth. They had had two children. Their names? Margaret and Martha. Shortly after the birth of Martha, George had died in 1982. Then 2 years after his death, poor Elizabeth ends up dying in 1985. Then Margaret and Martha go to live with Michael and Patty because in their wills, both George and Elizabeth's wills, they had wanted them to be Margaret and Martha's caretakers. Then him and Patty break up. He moves back to the States because, again, they were living in Germany at this time. He moves back to the States. He meets Kathleen in 1987, I believe. They start living together in around 1989, and then Margaret and Martha come to live with him. And then Todd and Clayton soon follow. And then she had her daughter as well, Caitlin. So this is a big, happy, blended ass family, right? Margaret says if there was issues between Kathleen and Michael, it would be hard not to know. We were an open family. False. False. Really and truly false. You never know what is going on within a marriage, right? Whether you think you guys are open and you tell everybody everything, you really do not know the inner workings of a marriage. So there could have been issues that are not privy to the children. And I think there's nothing wrong with that. So to now we kind of be like, oh, we wouldn't know. No, you wouldn't. You wouldn't have known. Then we see them do this test. And this test, I hate. I forgot they did this until we were at the scene and I'm like, oh, shit. Like, I absolutely hate this. It makes me cry every time listening to this test that they do. It is heartbreaking. But we see them do this test of what can be heard from the swimming pool if someone was yelling. So like they're basically trying to test of if Michael was at the pool and Kathleen was back in the house at the staircase where she had fallen, if she was yelling out for help, would Michael have heard her? And let me just kind of preface the scene here. It's a long ways. This is a big fucking house. And it's a long ways. And the pool area has like a water feature in a sense where it's like dripping water into the like those little like sprinkler things going into the pool. So it's quite loud. And I don't think most people would hear anything. But anyway, there are going to they're going to play a tape recording of someone screaming for help, and it's daunting. And because you literally, I'm not going to play it because it's just too much. I'm too much mentally, I mean, and emotionally. But you literally hear this recording being like, help, help me, help, somebody, help me. It's absolutely gut wrenching. There's no other, it's even more than that, but it's absolutely gut wrenching. And you can kind of hear it very muffled in the office. Like clearly you can hear something's like you can hear something, but um it's not loud by any means, but you can definitely hear the words. But by the pool, nothing. There's absolute silence. There is nothing. And that is where we end episode 1. So for the main feed, this is where we end the episode. So again, if you want to hear the full episode for this, you can head on over to Patreon. And then if you want to hear the remaining episodes, you can head on over to Patreon. As for Patreon, we're going to take a quick break here. You're not going to feel any different. We're going to take a quick break here and then we'll come back and do episode 2.